Father Tom, we're currently witnessing the greatest refugee crisis worldwide since the Second World War, and there's a lot of tension because of it in the world. Now, our media and our culture tends to focus on what's happening specifically in Europe, on the borders of Europe, with refugees coming across the Mediterranean or through Turkey into Europe. And there's political tension, there's social tension, there's religious tension, it's all there. But when you look specifically at the crisis, what do you think is the Western world's responsibility, Europe's responsibility, North America, the developed world's responsibility in responding to this global crisis?
Let me approach that in two different ways. One, I think, is taking an honest look at our role in creating these crises. I think as we're filming this today, Syria is a little quieter than it was a couple of years ago. Syria cannot be resolved by Syria. It's all of the various players who, in a sense, are telling Syria what to do or what not to do. I think we have to acknowledge that our sort of global politic, our ways of entering into different conflicts, entering into different situations, has an effect on what happens in terms of this whole refugee crisis. One campaign which has gone on for a number of years, Congo is a constantly in flux place. Our cell phones depend upon the minerals which come out of Congo.
Right.
That is a conflict area because people are taking those minerals. We play a certain role. It may not be direct. So I think one thing would just be to acknowledge that we have some responsibility for what's going on. I think the second piece is we do have responsibility as, I would say, Christians, as people with resources, as people who really should be extending sisterhood, brotherhood to those more in need. I'm not saying we open our borders. I'm not saying that we meet every refugee, every migrant's need. But what I would say is we need to offer constructive and reasonable ways that people whose lives are in danger can receive protection, can receive a new start. We need to provide some help in those parts of the world who are bearing the brunt of supporting refugees. 86% of refugees are in the developing world, not in Europe, not in North America. Those are the countries bearing the primary burden of supporting refugees throughout the world. What can we concretely do to help them in their service?
The argument against sort of creating some open doors for these refugees to come into our parts of the world are, a lot of them are based on fear of instability in different ways, economic, political, social, religious, whatever it might be. How do you respond to those critiques or those arguments to say, no, I mean, these people need to stay in their part of the world because we need to look after ourselves?
Sure. Well, I think our two countries, Canada and the US, we have a history of being countries which have welcomed successive waves of migrants. And at least in the US, there's been push and pull on that. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it's more shut. So this is part of our history, and we can do it. I want to echo what you said. There are things to be afraid of. There are certainly fears out there. The world is not all perfect. But I would say from a spiritual point of view, to make decisions based out of fear is a temptation. It is the evil spirit. And a lot of the political posturing, a lot of the talk right now is using fear to get what you want or what I want. The gospel, I think, calls us to look on the situation, to look on these people as Jesus does. And that would give us a very different perspective on how we deal with this crisis.
Very quickly, what do you think a possible solution would be to this global refugee crisis that we're experiencing? I mean, obviously it's very complex, but if you could offer just, an insight, what would you say?
Put Catholic social teaching into practice.
All right, Father Tom, thanks very much.
Most welcome. Thank you.